Hey there everybody, my name is Snitch, and welcome back to another episode of CEO Select. I'd like to start today's episode by once again thanking everybody for the positive responses I've been getting. I've been getting a lot of messages, even on Advanced Wars by Web itself, from people who I match up in League saying they love the content, lots of nice critique on Discord, and people just say they're really enjoying the series so far, and I really appreciate that. Like I said, it was kind of just a for fun, passion thing of mine. I'm really enjoying playing Advanced Wars again. I just wanted to kind of get out there and make some content. I'm glad it's being so well received. Had a bit of feedback that I've been talking a little bit fast. I know I tend to do this. I'm going to try and slow it down today, keep things a little bit more legible. Is that the reading version? I can't remember what the vocal version is. I think it's intelligible, is you can't hear something, but I don't know if legible is appropriate for audio content. But either way, I'm going to do my best to kind of pace things out a little bit better. So let's just get into today's game. That's all I got for you guys so far. Today's game is a tier 2 match on Shadow Drifter. Shadow Drifter is a really interesting map. Has a lot of has this really interesting shoal setup. It's kind of like shoal, ocean, river setup with this lander, and this lander has a lot of space to kind of move units out in this kind of location around each player's port. Has this side area with the airport. It's a really interesting map. I'm playing against Nobody Good today. Great player. I've played against them quite a few times. They normally hover around 1 to 1.k in Standard League. I think they're pretty active in the other ladders as well, but really solid player. Had a lot of close games against them, and this one in itself is very, very close as well. Definitely a tense match, and even by the end, I think, you know, they could have held on a lot longer. They ended up just resigning kind of out of courtesy, but I think the game could have gone a lot longer if we both kept playing it the way we were. But yeah, I'm playing Olaf today. Olaf's day today is that he is not affected by snow, but he is affected more by rain. Obviously not common circumstance in the global league. Random weather is not applicable, so the only time you'll face rain is if you're in a matchup against Drake, and Olaf will traditionally win up against Drake anyway, I believe, just because of the nature of the powers and the fact that Drake has weaker air units, which can be pretty applicable in quite a lot of maps. Having weaker copters can be relevant. And I think snow is just generally considered to be a stronger weather condition in general. Playing against Max. Max's direct units gain 20% additional attack as a day-to-day. But his indirect units lose 10% attack, so they're 100, and they have -1 range. So traditionally when you're playing Max, you never want to do indirects. Obviously, Olaf's powers very based around causing the weather snow. Snow makes it harder for units to traverse on plains, forests, just towers like this. Obviously, this map has a little bit of a counter with that due to a lot of like cities and roads in this area. It can still be kind of easy to kind of move through shoals as well, I believe, and not affected by snow. It's mainly just plains, forests. So while there is some limiting here with Olaf's super around this kind of area, there are definitely pockets of space where you can kind of play around the snow. Max's powers grant him additional direct damage as well as increased movement. Definitely something to always consider. I think in this game I make a few mistakes not really considering the additional movement range that Max's powers provide. So you do have to kind of keep that in mind when dealing with Max, that you have to be like, Max players are very, very active in both using their regular power and their super, depending on the situation. Whereas a CEO like Olaf, traditionally you want to save up the entire super every single time. Not much point using Blizzard when Winter Fury is so effective due to the power of mass damage. But with Max, you know, it can be very standard just to drop Max Force for the additional +1 range, the additional direct damage, and just take these really aggressive trades. So you do have to kind of always be calculating additional movement with regards to Max. So you'll definitely see a few times in this game where I make mistakes and I misjudge the movement. I don't consider the power. I don't consider the strength of the trades that Max can have. And it catches me off guard and almost ends up losing me the game. But yeah, I think that's all I've got for the intro. So let's just get into the analysis. I'm playing first turn this game, first player. Playing Cobalt Ice, naturally, best region, don't at me. Double infantry build, and I put my lander out here. This is one of those maps where you really want to be aggressive with the lander. You can get a lot of value out of it on this kind of map. Obviously, a lot of maps with pre-deployed landers, normally they're pretty useful. But I think on this map especially, there's a lot of value with regards to what you can do with the lander on this map. So you definitely want to be active with it where you can. I guess, you know, maybe if you're against a Sammy matchup, you might want to leave it on your HQ in some scenarios, try and deny a capture, but it's not really relevant in Standard League that much. And I don't think most people pick Sammy on this map anyway. My opponent's first turn. Standard infantry build, moving for the closest city capture. They move their lander on the opposite side of mine, actually, is something to note. This is on my HQ side, which means I have the potential to go for, I think, you know, it is fine. But basically, the lander movement is setting up for these two central properties. It's like a chain of two here. Obviously, this city is going to be your go-to as it's within 2 tiles, but every other move is within 2 moves. You know, you can move down 2, then the port. You can move 3 to the right, then the city. 3 to the left, then the city. But all of these are singular cities, compared to putting an infantry in the lander and moving to the center, and then you have a chain of 2. So you always want to prioritize these central cities first, if you can. And that's why you see that we're both prepping our landers, basically, to be prioritizing these cities first over something else. My second turn, moving for my close city captures. Building more infantry. Standard. Day 2 for my opponent. Gonna be capturing the cities, so closest city captures. Moving up the infantry. What my opponent ends up doing here is actually having 2 infantry potentially for this lander, because these 2 don't have a better move. And this is mainly due to the second turn advantage, giving them an extra infantry, but yeah, they actually have two infantry to prep in the lander, which it can be a pretty significant difference when it comes to the center. Finishing my caps, move my infantry onto the lander, like I said, moving into the central area. Just getting in the middle here. My opponent could go for like an aggressive land, like here, so I choose to put here, so I can go for this safer city if I do need to play defensive. End up moving up here, going for the airport. As usual, I prefer to go for my further back properties before going for any kind of closer ones. Generally, I like to just cap these ones up here first, even though I'm probably not going to build copters anytime soon. It's still 1,000 income, same as picking up a city, and I'd rather capture the further back properties so I can move all my units forward and not be as concerned about them later. And you'll see my opponent in this game takes quite a different route in that regard, and it makes the game quite interesting as a result. Opponent's next turn, just build another infantry. Just getting ready to capture all these cities. Go for this capture within 3 tiles, double load into the lander, bring the lander into the center, then they have 2 infantry here. They could have gone for an aggressive land, maybe here, and pressured these 2 instead. Because I wouldn't be in range to attack, but they decided to just play it safe, just go for the uncontested properties, which is totally fine. It would just be a little bit hard for me to get reinforcements, so I definitely could see kind of a more aggressive landing being done here. Moving out to capture my properties, start capturing the central one first because I wasn't under any threat. I'd rather get this one and then move back. Doesn't really matter because it's a, it's a chain, but I think I just get the furthest one first. In this case, move my lander back, ready to reinforce. Build my first tank on the left. The reason I go for the left here is because I have infantry covering all the closest cities, whereas I didn't have anything on this port yet, so I want to get another infantry out to try and capture this port. Nothing, no other cities within 2 moves. This city's 3 moves away, this city's 3 moves away, so it would take me a while to get to them anyway. So I'd rather just build a tank to kind of control this area a bit, and then I can build this infantry, and it's a 2 move to this port to get another 1,000 funding. So I just consider that a bit more of a valuable choice. Opponent's next turn, they actually end up going for this defensive capture, just leaving the 1 infantry here in the middle, which is fine, but I kind of expected them to go for both of these cities, so I thought it was a bit interesting. Start capturing the airport as well, playing quite similar to me in this regard, but they do end up leaving this city for a while. Port moves into the middle, they build the tank on the left side to counter mine, but this is delaying this city as well. Obviously they're building a tank in response to where my tank is, I assume, but yeah, it is kind of delaying some of their captures because they have to build all the infantry here, but this infantry, like I said, it's not getting to any cities within 2 turns. Everything is 3 moves away. Right? This one's already covered, but both of these are 3 moves. So it's gonna be a while, even this one is 3 moves. It's gonna be a while before this infantry actually gets any capture value. Whereas if they built infantry here, they could have got it in 2 turns. So I feel like I actually kind of end up delaying a little bit of their income here as well. And you'll see that this city actually ends up going uncaptured for quite a while, I think, generally because of the way they play the left side of the map. My next turn, finishing capturing my northern properties in the top left. Get the airport, start capturing this one. Move my tank out. Choose to go here. This is actually applying threat to both of these infantry, and the tank can't really cover this one in the middle, so I'm thinking I'll probably end up getting a free hit on the middle one here. Most likely. Move my other infantry out, move up to get the port next turn, start capturing this city, build another infantry, finish the central capture, build another infantry on the left. Didn't have enough money for tanks, obviously, built one last turn. My opponent finishes capturing the central property, capturing this one on the right. Just finishing their captures, moving the lander back, starting the port capture. tank comes up here to cover these infantry on the left, because obviously I can get to this one soon as well. But it isn't covering the central infantry like I indicated last turn, so this one is under threat. As a free hit, finishing capturing my properties, go for my free hit. Like I said, tank can't reach me, can't get to this location, so I just get a free hit on this infantry, and it's very heavily pressured as well, and it also delays this capture because this infantry was meant to get this city as well. So actually hitting this neutral infantry is giving me quite a lot of value because it means that this property is now delayed. And this property was coverable by the tank, but it can't reach the infantry here, so even if they go for the capture now, which is covered by the tank, this infantry is already half HP, so it would take twice as long. 4 days instead of 2. Start capturing the rest of my properties, finish these early 2 captures. Load up an infantry into the lander. Like I said, good lander movement is pretty key to this map. You can get a lot of units out, like even things like medium tanks can have quite a lot of movement in this map because you always have this free lander and you can kind of just always move it around and you get a lot of value in that regard. It's very easy to transport units to more central fronts or even like a kind of like getting from here to like over here with a medium tank. Normally this takes, you know, yeah, to like this square is like 3 turns, but you can kind of make it in 2. And it can be quite a substantial difference when it comes to reinforcing. So I got my first free hit of the game, built my second tank over here. I already have the infantry kind of covering these cities, so I don't need any more infantry here as well. I mean, obviously you build it over here, but I'm just thinking like I want another tank to cover this one because I'm assuming my opponent's going to start moving up, maybe onto this city to try and get a counter threat. And Max is very scary to deal with in direct combat if you don't get a first strike as well. Yeah, infantry goes for the cap. Like I said, it's gonna be 3 days now. I said twice as long. I forgot about the repair, but either way, same principle. My opponent starts moving up aggressively here on the right side. Could be trying to pressure my comm tower. It's always something to think about is the comm tower's in the corner. Obviously, they rush to capture their left comm tower, which I think is pretty fair on this map at this point. There's a lot of early aggression generally in the center of this kind of on this kind of map. So I wouldn't blame anyone actually for trying to get the comm tower fairly early in the game, but they do have kind of like these uncaptured cities here. This one remains kind of uncaptured. I mean, I'm only popping up one city next turn, but I'm already moving infantry in place to get all these cities, whereas these ones my opponent hasn't really ended up making many moves for yet. In comparison, moving on the infantry out to the center with the lander, move another one up. Tank goes on the city. Solid defensive position, threatening my tank as well. Obviously, I'll have to move out in the next turn. I'm actually built a recon. At this point, I know for sure they're trying to heavily delay my comm tower, but this is quite a large economic investment building like a recon. Especially when, you know, if I get a tank to this area, I kind of just cancel this unit out entirely. So it's definitely a big investment for my opponent here, trying to shut down my comm tower and use that as a big advantage. We'll see how it pans out. Moving my infantry down, I end up just pressuring the city and putting a tank behind this infantry because obviously the tank doesn't want to swing into the infantry with another one, or the tank behind it, right? So I end up just pressuring this capture because I feel like I can maybe actually just get it because my opponent doesn't really have much infantry resources in this area. It's mainly just the tank, so I wonder if I can actually kind of push it into this. So I end up going for it. Finish my 2 captures here. Start getting another city. Moving more of my infantry down. I end up actually pivoting my tank entirely because now we're 1-to-1 in tanks here, so I could maintain the advantage, but obviously I'm never going to be able to hit this while it's on the city, especially without a comm tower. So I actually end up pivoting over here, again threatening more of these units, and there's no tanks over here. My opponent just committed a recon, so it's already a pretty awkward area to like not have for the enemy tank to be in. So I actually ended up pivoting my tank across like the whole map, ending up looking for this right side because it's like so many, you know, so many free dudes hanging out around here. And this recon can't cover any of them, and I'm trying to dissuade this like comm tower push that I kind of see is coming. I don't think it will actually work because they have a massive unit count advantage, at least like in this direct area. I've committed a lot more of my army's a lot more spread in comparison. Like they've got a big clump here and a big clump here. But maybe moving the tank over will get me some free hits in the next few turns, where my opponent can't. Like even if they build a tank, you know, it's going to be 2 turns before it catches up. Whereas like I've got some free hits on infantry here, maybe. Moving my infantry down, and I go for my first copter build here. I generally like to do copter when I have like a free turn to buy, you know, a double infantry copter build if I can. Especially getting the first copter can be pretty impactful on all the maps because especially, we talked about it before, I think on one of the From Wolf games, but when the airports are asymmetrical and they're across the diagonal, I don't know why I keep saying asymmetrical, I mean diagonal. When they're on different diagonal fronts, building a response copter feels a lot worse, because generally these two aren't going to interact until much later in the game, the airports. Like, the air battles won't be there until much later. So it can be very difficult to feel confident building your own copter unless you just want to trade aggression. Because obviously, if you have a copter and they have no anti-air and no enemy copter, it's completely unrivaled, and it can, you know, trade with tanks all the time, takes no damage back almost. Just walks around trading for free, so you kind of end up forcing your opponent to build like an anti-air just for one copter on a map like this. So I always do like trying to get a copter out as soon as possible in a lot of these scenarios. My opponent's next turn, finish the comm tower capture, go for another turn on this. Moving up to get these lower cities, and yeah, they are making an aggressive push for my comm tower. Their tankers are moving to the right here, so it's still 1-to-1 here on the right, which is something to consider, and trying to cover my tank over here. Moving the units up. They build a copter as well. Infantry's moving into the center, pressuring my cities maybe. That was weird. Oh, I went to the lander. Infantry goes back into the lander. Just getting the free movement. This is always a good thing to keep in mind. If you're not familiar with the mechanics of Advanced Wars by Web, you can actually do as many unloads and loads on a transport in a turn as you want without necessarily even moving the transport. Although it does have to be waiting to unload. But what my opponent did here is they moved the infantry 3 spaces into the lander and then unloaded it here. So it just gives the infantry, you know, 2 extra movement here. I guess technically 1 because it could have been on the land. But either way, 1 extra movement towards the center. Just a little bit of efficiency from my opponent. Definitely a technique you should use in your own games. And moving the lander back. I guess you didn't have to wait. Moving the lander back to wait to pick up more units. Finishing my captures. I moved my tank here because I see that there's actually, you know, there's a forest tower here, so I can only go 5. I get a free hit on this infantry, pressuring all these units over here as well. This copter is obviously coming, so I'm gonna have to pull out soon, but either way. I actually ended up getting the KO. Yeah, I forgot I had an infantry here, so I actually ended up picking up a sneaky KO on an infantry here because this tank is actually quite limited in movement because of the forest. Started to capture these cities on the left. I do end up going for this capture because, especially because this tank pulled out, right? If this tank had come over here, I don't think I would have gone for this. But when this tank pulls out, we're 1-to-1 at tanks again. And even if they go for the free hit on this infantry and take it out, I'm going to end up swinging on this tank and then forcing my opponent to blow like a bunch of turns. They'll probably pull out and go for repairs and maybe block me. But it's just pulling a bunch of my opponent's resources and income in the future. Like, while it might feel good to like go here and snag this free KO on the infantry, at least from my experience, when I go for these kind of plays, even though it feels nice to get like a unit count advantage, you normally have to pull out to a city and then you end up bleeding a lot of economy, kind of repairing that tank just for taking a free hit, and it ends up not being very valuable in the long run, even if in the moment it seems pretty good. I also end up moving my copter down to cover even more, because now I have 2 units covering it. Move my units down. If this copter was 1 tower further, I could have gone for a hit on this infantry, so it's kind of unfortunate. But obviously it's just limited by how much it can move. Using my lander to transport more infantry to the center. I just move here and take an attack on this infantry. Just try to slow down this push, honestly. I don't expect to be able to win this at this point. But this recon can't get in range anyway. If they commit the double infantry hit to take out this infantry, it's kind of wasting the turns of the infantry here, delaying the capture, delaying the push on the comm. So I'm just trying to slow it down. I know they can go for this city, so I'm just using, you know, the opportunity to get attack. I put another tank to try and cover this corner. And then I build another tank over here because I have 1500 this turn. Just to kind of reinforce this area on the left some more. My opponent's next turn. They finally finish capturing the central property. Copter's moving out, capturing these properties down here. But you see, this one over here is still going uncapped, and I think it's mainly because I forced the tank build here still. Like, obviously they had to kind of build it to counteract my tank, but they never had an infantry going this way. I think my opponent had options actually to do it, so maybe it's just a mistake. But yeah, I think this city probably could have been captured by now. A lot of these infantry are sitting in the center, not really accomplishing anything. They actually go for a big swing on this infantry. Obviously the copter is covering this recon, so it can be a little bit difficult for me to counter hit, but I might consider it anyway. One thing I was thinking of is maybe I shouldn't have gone for a tank here. I think I should have gone for an anti-air, because an anti-air can cover these infantry very effectively as well, and it also counters the copter. So I think it was actually a mistake last turn for me to build a tank, and I think I should have built an anti-air in this situation. I believe I was regretting it. Kind of quickly after, they pick up the KO on my infantry, so they trade it back. Go for this double hit. Is going to pick me off as well. This infantry is very low now, though. Good efficiency from my opponent, though, I think, to hit with the weaker one first and retain the full HP of this one, which pressures this capture a lot harder. I think it was a much better play. They actually end up building an anti-air here to cover my copter. Like I said, it's just very hard for the copters to meet each other on this map until it starts developing a lot more centrally. But another tank on the right side, or actually their first tank on the right side. Their other tank moves up here, so there's a lot of threat on my tank right now. Probably got to pull out of this area. But, you see, I do end up sneaking this cap. That's because of my units here, so I am going to end up actually getting this city, which, even though I'm losing this one, my opponent's also not capturing it yet, and I am actually going to end up getting this one quite aggressively. So my next turn. Finish my property captures, +3. I'm at 17,000 to 13,000 income right now. My opponent's only popping one city next turn, so I'm actually quite ahead in the capture game in this game. I think it's just because my opponent didn't kind of set up to get these neutral cities here. They kind of went aggressively on the comm tower, especially with this aggressive right push. Like I said, they're playing quite a different style. I'm definitely playing a lot more for the economy in this regard. I do wonder if I could be better about abusing my leads in this kind of case, because I feel like I generally don't punish enough for having a big enough economy lead here. Like, there's definitely I don't know, like, I say not to build medium tanks and stuff, but when I'm making 17k a turn, that could be medium tank infantry every turn, and I do wonder if kind of like spamming like that is more valuable sometimes than I perceive it when I have this kind of economy lead. I think I'm not as good at abusing economical leads as I could be. But obviously double tank is very valuable as well, so it's tough to say. I end up getting a free hit on this infantry once again, because this tank moved down to defend, you know, a little bit of a more defensive position. I guess scared of the double hit from the copter tank coming up. Or just my, you know, I'm kind of swarming resources here, so maybe they're just waiting for their anti-air to arrive. So I end up getting another free hit on this infantry, and I start pressuring these central properties, because my opponent's pooling a lot of resources over here now. I guess by making these attacks, I end up pulling a lot of units over here. And now this left side is a lot more exposed. Moving more infantry down, moving my copter down. Very aggressive positioning here, but, you know, I'm just trying to make sure this anti-air goes left, I guess. I just take a hit on this infantry in the center. Moving my tank onto this point. It's safe from the copter. Can only get hit by the tank, and obviously I'm on a city, so I'm feeling pretty confident. I think I end up shipping my infantry out here, right? Or I just move the lander back, I think. Yeah, I just move the lander back, ready to pick up this next tank if I want to. Moving my other infantry out here to the right to defend. I move my tank up here to defend as well, but my opponent can get a pretty good block here and can end up getting the comm tower anyway. Being 2 towers down is kind of dangerous, but what they are giving up is a lot of economic value. And they have built things like a recon as well. So my opponent is not only quite behind in the money game, they also have committed resources to units that aren't particularly effective. But they don't go for the second comm tower cap, end up blocking with the infantry. Tank moves up. Landing more of their infantry out into the center. End up taking the KO on my infantry here. Kind of cleaning up my men in the middle. Feels kind of bad, but... Oh, oops. Too far, too far. Where were we? My apologies. My apologies. Yeah, they end up cleaning up a lot of my infantry in the middle here, which feels kind of bad. I think they go for the aggressive capture as well. Yeah, they do. But I actually have another tank kind of in range here to reinforce. I did just build an anti-air as well, which I do need to get to the center. Like I said, this unit could have been an anti-air maybe, and I could have had the lander in position already, and maybe I could have an anti-air at the center here, which would make me a lot more effective. But yeah. We actually were going for the aggressive attack here on this infantry. I didn't really understand this one. Oh yes, it was to move the tank on the comm tower, I remember now. Yeah, I still didn't really get it, but I think it was just, like, I think you're probably better off just moving the infantry here, maybe blocking, as opposed to actually going for this attack, because it's just a losing trade. But I guess they felt they wanted to get the tank on the comm. Obviously they recognize that they're quite weak on the bottom left here, so I think they're just trying to delay my infantry. And if they take out this foot soldier, obviously I can't capture the comm tower, but yeah, they're just trying to take me back, or knock me back here. What you'll notice here, actually, for this turn, is that my opponent only had 13,600. So they couldn't even build 2 tanks, and this is because they're only getting 13 per turn. And I think this is where the income hit is these kind of turns where you're really feeling it if you're my opponent, because they have to go tank infantry. Whereas a lot of turns, I'm dropping double vehicles. You know, last turn I was anti-air tank, the turn before I was tank. Like, I actually have quite a big economic value in that regard, and it's really helping me get ahead in the vehicle count. Even if now I am down in units by quite a bit, because my opponent's been taking a lot of infantry. You know, I'm already 5 tanks to 4. It's not actually that much, to be honest, yet, but, you know, it will definitely start to build over time when my opponent keeps dropping turns like this. I end up moving the tank down here to get the KO on the infantry, and I think it's quite, you know, smart what I do. I end up using the tank to block this anti-air, which lets me get free hits with the copter onto this comm tower tank, and I'm just kind of whittle it down eventually, and then I'm going for the capture. I move another tank down in case the anti-air tries to do something weird. And I start moving more infantry into the center, pressuring these properties. Load my anti-air into the lander and get it over here, trying to cover this location. I think I'm gonna probably have to give up this property. My opponent's just defending it too well. So I end up trying to spin around and try and get some of these central captures. I have 2 tanks hit at 1, and the copter can't hit my tanks because of the anti-air, so I was feeling fairly confident. But you'll see I really underestimate the power of double comm tower max. Would not recommend. I push in here, pressuring this comm tower as well. Gonna force my opponent to commit more resources into this top right, which means they can't reinforce the center, which I'm already feeling a bit more confident in. I end up building a second anti-air here. This is kind of a preemptive maneuver because I kind of expected the copter to be moving over here to try and pressure this area as well, but I think I had time, so I think maybe this should have just been another tank. Definitely can make an argument I could be going for more copters as well, but I'm feeling pretty confident with just the one in the bottom left for now. I actually end up going for this first hit. Double comm tower plus max is an 8-5 on a city. Feels kind of bad. So that kind of already diffuses my defense here in my retake of this comm tower. So yeah, my opponent has 2 comm towers up right now, which is really scary with regards to like the trades. The recon moves in. It's just going to one-shot this infantry. Direct max recon. This infantry ends up sacking itself to not even get 1 damage. Feels kind of bad, but the second infantry will also sack itself and finally gets 2. My opponent just drops a medium tank here. I think this is trying to defuse this situation. But it's a big hit for them because they're not even making a medium tank's worth of money per turn. And this is kind of what I meant when I was talking about, I feel like maybe I'm not aggressive enough with my income sometimes. Like, I feel like I could have had, honestly, I could have had maybe 2 medium tanks aggressively with my turns. And a medium tank up here would have just completely diffused this comm tower push. So I wonder if there was like a window to build an earlier like aggro medium tank, but I'm not sure how many turns I actually had. More than 17. I think a few times, honestly, but I do wonder if it's something that I should consider in my playstyle. Kind of taking more of an advantage of getting a solid early capture game. My opponent going over this city as well. We're kind of ending up trading these cities in the middle, and this is the big one that I don't see. This is a max double comm tower tank. It's a 9-2. I mean, it's on a show, but I just didn't. I was like, that's a lot of damage, man. And so that was kind of a scary one. Copters are moving out defensively. Obviously, I can't hit anything because of my anti-air placement. And then I feel kind of bad about buying this anti-air because I meant it's kind of wasted. And yeah, my opponent builds medium tank infantry, like we said. This anti-air doesn't move at all. Can't really do anything because moving up will just get it, you know, 2-hit threatened by tanks. I end up just going for this city capture because I'm going to clean up a lot of stuff here. Yeah, I moved my tank from the left onto this recon. I actually end up finishing it off with the anti-air. Feeling pretty fine about that, so I captured this city as well. Continue the cap here. Got the aggressive posture on the copter as well, so this copter can't stay here. I move around to 2-hit KO the tank, and then I can end up catching the comm tower. So I'll end up picking up the comm tower next turn. So I only have to deal with the double the double comm tower max for 2 turns. But it was a painful, you know, this trade alone makes it a painful turn with regards to value for sure. End up pulling my infantry out defensively. Obviously, you know, I don't want to lose this tank for free, so I end up backing off to repairing it, moving this tank back as well. I end up going for the first hit here, which is only a 7-4, which is, again, kind of painful, but, you know. And then I do end up dropping my medium tank as well. I guess at this point, I don't know, I feel like I have such a weird mental block with regards to medium tanks, because a lot of times you don't want to build them, but I think there's a lot of times where just dropping them can, like I said, completely diffuse the situation, especially when you have a solid economic lead. But I feel like a lot of times I end up teching up after my opponent. I kind of like handshake their tech as opposed to like doing it aggressively where it could be relevant. So yeah, I just kind of like, you know, I see my opponent build a medium tank and I'm like, oh, that seems like a pretty good idea. That would really help me over here. And I just also build a medium tank. But, you know, I mean, I do wonder, especially on this map as well. Like I said, the lander can help you with aggressive medium tank positioning. I do wonder if there was an earlier turn to build one. That could have been good. My opponent's next turn. Finally, they're moving up for these neutral cities and capping these 2, which will kind of fix their economy game. But they haven't got this top right one as well, where I've got the one down here. But they are going for it now. Medium tanks moving over on the left to cover. Can hit this tank, so I have to be a bit cautious. Anti-air goes to defend this. I couldn't believe this, actually. I mean, I guess I can, but, you know, once again, 2 comm tower max, anti-air, I guess it one-shot on cities. I don't think anti-air one-shot on cities normally. You know, if it's Andy, for example. Even with 2 comms, I think it lives barely. Yeah. So I just wasn't really thinking about like the combination. Like I think even does one comm tower max one shot on cities. This is information I need to know. I guess my damage calculator is slightly off screen. My apologies. Let me just find max on this list. I'll do it someday. Okay, one comm tower max has a 1 what is it? 10% chance. Something like that, yeah. 20% chance. 15. You know, don't expect me to do math when I'm recording a video, guys. Come on. Moving the lander back, ready to pick on my units. The copter ends up pathing back really defensively. I feel like moving the copter over here has kind of made it pretty useless. It's kind of just hanging here doing nothing. I guess it's you know, holding defensively for the medium tank, but they already have an anti-air here, so I don't feel like it's accomplishing much. They end up popping a really late max force. I guess they see a window to break my wall here. I'm not sure they had it any sooner, to be honest, but yeah, they do end up getting 2 kind of big hits here. Take this 4-7, which ends up at a 2-3. And go for the infantry hits. But it was not a huge value power. In this matchup, I didn't really talk about the matchup between these 2 COs, but generally most Olaf matchups kind of come down to trying to play as close to an even game as possible. At least with regards to like this kind of matchup. Like obviously Max is a much stronger day-to-day for the most part, right? A lot of these melee trades are going to be in his favor, so I'm just trying to play as even a game as possible. And when I end up reaching my super, I want the game to be relatively close. And at a point where popping my super will let me wall break or something. Like just let me kind of smash open the game and really change how it really put my opponent behind in value just through the mass damage and then the snow prohibiting any real counterattacks. So that's generally kind of like my aim with this kind of matchup, is I'm just, yeah, trying to set up a scenario where Winter Fury will basically just win me the game, or at least put me far enough ahead that it has my opponent in a really big pitfall with regards to like army value. I end up pulling my infantry back here because I just know I'm not gonna get this. Finish scrapping the comm tower, finally we're 1-1 again. Get these neutral cities once again, popping the economy in my favor, but they are getting 2 neutrals next turn. So pulling my copter out, blocking with the tanks so the anti-air can't get a free kill. Putting my medium tank here to throw out these tanks and yeah, just kind of try to protect my cities here. And we're going for the double hit on this 2 HP tank and taking it out. I mean, all the tanks are really low anyway, so these trades aren't amazing, but aren't great. Building out on artillery, trying to counter this medium tank down here. Building another tank up here. Maybe I could chase down some of these tanks or pressure this comm with my units here, because I do have like a medium tank advantage. My opponents are pulling out of this area a bit, moving more tanks up. Medium tank moves here and blocking in my infantry feels bad, man. They go for the double hit on this tank. It still doesn't take it out. I remember seeing this. I think I was watching in real time this turn, and I was like, you hate to see that. Double infantry hit on a 1 HP tank, and it doesn't fall. Tragic. But the 3rd infantry does finally get it. My opponent ends up putting a medium tank here on the right to counter my medium tank. Obviously, max artillery. That's another argument, I think, with regards, especially in this matchup. Max doesn't have artillery as an option, especially with regards to medium tanks. He can't build artillery as a counter because obviously his range and his firepower when it comes to artillery are just generally too poor. So Max doesn't have the flexibility of the other COs to just drop an artillery when he sees a medium tank, and it's definitely something to think about. Like when I put a medium tank down, my opponent has to build a medium tank in response. And again, like it's another example of if I'd pushed my economic advantage harder and just teched really aggressively, I wonder if my opponent would have had answers for it, because you can't build a medium tank if you don't have the money for it, and Max can't build artillery to counter it. So it's definitely again another way I could have played this game. I think that would have been a bit more effective and maybe locked my opponent down a lot in the early game and kind of prevented this comm tower push. And you know, maybe I mean, obviously it's a very different experience, but I do wonder if there's definitely lines there that could be impactful. So coming on to my next turn, moving my artillery down, getting ready to pressure this medium tank, moving this tank out to the center to kind of reinforce this area. Just go for this free hit on this infantry. You know, obviously they're not going to hit me with tanks, nothing's in range, just taking free damage. Get a free KO this infantry. I end up using my copter to hit this medium tank. This first hit doesn't feel great, it's 2 for 2, but any trade damage I can get on this is good. And I move a tank here to hit the anti-air, and another tank here to block the anti-air from getting to my copter. And then moving my anti-air down to cover all these units. I feel pretty happy about this move, but then I was looking at it afterwards, and I'm not sure I like it at all. Like, at first I was like, oh, this seems really clever. But I think they could have just gone for a max hit here. You know, this is like a lot of damage. It's like, yeah, 1 to 2 HP. They could have hit with the copter, moved the anti-air to finish this. And it would have, I mean, I could have taken out the anti-air, I guess, and then I had the anti-air. Yeah, I suppose, I don't know, I just think it would have diffused this entire push if my opponent had just traded really aggressively here. It might have been something I would have done. But if you go like, you know, medium tank hit, copter hit, anti-air moves up, finishes off this copter because they're both 7 HP. You know, I'll trade back the copter and the anti-air, but then the medium tank takes out my anti-air. I think my opponent just comes out ahead in value. So I was actually pretty nervous about them going for like an aggressive counterattack here. Drop the tank on the city here, just get a bit of repair so I can pressure these infantry a bit more. My opponent's forces are now kind of all spread from the center, like the complete opposite a few turns ago. Which is quite interesting. I end up just moving up my other anti-air, just kind of bringing it into the center as well, because it wasn't really getting any value up here. It doesn't have any real threat against all these tanks. My opponent's medium tank moving up. They go for a hit on this infantry. Didn't really understand this one. I think the other tank moves up to finish it, yeah. But I also thought this was weird because then I could get a free hit on this tank. Yeah, I didn't really understand this trade. Because obviously, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess it's actually a max force setup. Maybe if I take out this tank, they get max force. Yeah, again, I keep forgetting about max force all the time. And it definitely happens a few times this game. Then we go for an aggressive first hit on my infantry in the middle. They do go for this hit, but they ended up moving the anti-air to finish this off. This is where I thought it was weird. So they do end up killing this tank. But I'm not sure they just didn't see the line, maybe, that I saw. Because, yeah, this could have been a copter hit into an anti-air into copter. And then, yeah, even if I get, like, the anti-air counter, and I have an artillery coming and stuff, it's still really awkward, you know? And obviously I can anti-air. But I just feel like I'm losing, and they have another tank here. So I think my opponent, had they played this fight better, it could have been really bad for me. I think it was quite a bit of a blunder. I thought initially it was quite a good play, but it ended up looking pretty bad afterwards, to be honest. When I did more of the math, I was like, maybe not. So this turn, I see I'm pretty close to Winter Fury. Just need to get 5k of value. Yeah, like I said, my opponent's probably going for the max force play, but I end up taking this free hit on the tank anyway. And then when I hit this anti-air, I get Winter Fury. Move the artillery down, pop Winter Fury. Huge value immediately. You can just see, just look at the army value swing. This is what I'm talking about with Olaf, right? So at this point in the game, we're quite even. 17 to 16 unit count, 97k to 84k. I'm even a little bit ahead. I think it's mainly just the capture phase going in my favor a fair bit. But this is the moment that you want to see as Olaf. You want to be in this position, either, you know, even or slightly ahead, and then you want to drop a big super, which immediately cuts out 20k of my opponent's value. This medium tank is pretty stuck now. I'm gonna get a hit with my copter. I start capturing this city because it should be pretty, you know, uncontested unless the tanks move in to hit this, and then I'm getting free hits on the tanks back. And also, you see the value of Winter's Fury here as well. Normally this tank could be reinforcing these kind of squares, but now it doesn't reach. This is a 2 move for treads now. So, you know, it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's as far as the tank can get. So the tank can't even reach this fight anymore. So you see, I mean, this copter can't even get away now. It has nowhere to move to get out. The medium tank is now stuck with all my units. I end up trapping all of my opponent's units here, basically. And then using the Winter Fury to discourage any real counterattack. Take a big hit on the infantry here. Move my tank down to cover. In case I want to go for the cap, just blocking these infantry from getting through. Obviously, they can only hit once, so you don't want to just ram infantry into my tank. Picking up all these men in the middle. These free dudes. Obviously, the medium tank normally be able to reach, but it can't, even with a max force. That's the other thing, is I'm also countering any max force counterplay, because, you know, even if my opponent wants to move up here, the max force doesn't give them the squares anymore to get this first hit. So I think my opponent was banking aggressively, you know, trying to set up a max force. But then my Winter Fury totally shuts down any of those players. Put the medium tank on 4. Now it's much less threatening. Gonna finish it next turn with the artillery for sure, unless they move it down, but even then my copter's gonna pick it up eventually. Moving more tanks down to reinforce. moving anti-air into the center, and I go copter tank infantry. Moving my lander ready to pick up the infantry. My opponent's next turn, you just see the pain here of playing into the snow. Like, they can't do pretty much anything aggressively. They go for a hit on this anti-air. They end up picking it off, but, you know. And they end up going for the hit on copter actually. It's pretty well positioned by my opponent, to be honest, to get these pickups. They are end up having to sack the medium tank, but, you know. Definitely could have felt worse, I think. And obviously they're a lot more able to reinforce this area, so I think they actually did up getting pretty good trades. Positioning all their tanks here on the right, ready to try and set up for either a power or a super next turn. Moving units back. I should have actually got this capture at this point, I think, but I think I make a mistake with my tank on the next turn because I kind of forget what it was doing. But I do end up winning this city as well. That's also pretty substantial for me. Yeah, so I go for this capture on this port. And normally my opponent shouldn't be able to contest this because this tank is blocking, and this infantry is too weak to contest. But I think I make the mistake of moving this tank. Move another infantry out, ready to contest these central properties. Move a medium tank here. This is my biggest blunder of the game, and you'll see why in the next turn. Once again, this is a massive example of me not respecting max force. You know, I see that it's 5, and I'm like, oh yeah, they can't get the hit. I don't know what I was thinking. Like, obviously they could just max force. I end up moving this tank back to get healed. This was a huge mistake as well. I should have won this port for free, which would have been a big economic lead as well. So quite a few blunders from me here as well. Moving my anti-air down, obviously this one was destroyed, so I need another one to cover my units, but I can't really save this tank. It's probably done for, so I just get a good trade on this tank as well. My artillery is covered by this copter though, and I have the infantry blocking these tanks from moving in on the artillery, so, you know, the copter would have to sack to trade into it. I guess they can attack from here, but, you know, it's the same thing. I've got 2 units covering the artillery now. More tanks in the center. Building another anti-air to counter this copter. Building another copter of my own. This game definitely does start to get a bit messy at this point, honestly. But yeah, max force comes out. I even blocked with the tank, but again, I just don't know what I was thinking. It was just really stupid. They end up taking this KO. Copter moves out to defend this. I guess, yeah, actually, I couldn't hold this anyway because of the copter moving, but yeah, either way. They do go for the hit on the artillery, drops it to 1. It does survive, which I actually think is pretty clutch, but... And yeah, they get the 2-hit KO on this this tank, and then he gets the massive first strike on the medium tank, and this was the biggest throw I had for sure. I was in a really solid economic position here until I take this hit, and it puts me really far down. Really big mistake on my end, just not respecting Max's movement ranges, basically. He's really one of the COs I find I play the least in T2, to be honest. I guess it's not that uncommon. I feel like I played this matchup a fair bit now that I think about it, but even then, I feel like a lot of the games, people just aren't taking as good advantage of the power as it could be in this range. And yeah, nobody good was getting a lot of value out of their usage in this game, and it's just me disrespecting the ability. So this was a huge blunder on my end. Taking 9 damage on my medium tank really weakens my area over here and throws me down quite a lot. So my next turn, took a lot of damage this turn. Feeling pretty bad. Obviously, like I said, I'm covering this tank though to get a double knockout. No anti-air to cover this copter. Obviously they have a copter, but I can block with infantry, which I'm gonna do. Moving my tanks up onto cities, holding positions. Obviously the city is mine now. A little bit ahead economy-wise, but yeah, not as much as I would have liked. I end up reloading these tanks that I just dropped into this lander, bringing them back. Oops. Oops! I can't keep getting away with it. Yeah, I think I just dropped... What the hell did I do? Okay, nothing, I guess. I think I just dropped these tanks here, like... Well, one of these tanks, like, last turn. And then I'm like, alright, we gotta send these tanks back. So I end up reloading these tanks into this lander. Bringing them back to try and hold this position. I'm not really sure if defending this medium tank is worth it, but I just don't want to sack it without forcing my opponent to commit. So I just put the anti-air in front, because it's also not really covering anything yet. The copter's still quite far away. Put the other anti-air to the center. Trying to pressure this copter and maybe this infantry. And my copter's covering all the units over here, so the copter can't get any free hits in this direction. Carry on capturing this middle city. It's been here for like ages, but maybe I'll get it someday. Build another copter. I'm feeling pretty confident about the air game at this point, and I kind of have the money to just throw at it, I guess, so... especially because there's so many medium tanks. I think copters are also a reasonable answer to medium tanks. They're not the best answer by any means. The hits aren't super value. You saw before, even I got like a 2 for 2. I think I was 9 HP though, but you know, I got a 2 for 2, even though the medium tank was on a shoal. It's not the best, but if you can get a couple of copter hits in a turn, you can easily start to whittle. And then once you get a medium tank to like 5-6 HP, it's a lot less threatening than it is at full HP for sure. Although I can still get some pretty strong hits. Yeah, my opponent just rolls in, takes the one shot, ends up finishing this one off. Feels kind of bad for me as well, because I never really want to attack with this artillery. Not sure about this. I feel like this all just got really messy, and it's all because of this massive mistake I made, where I took so much damage on my medium tank. And then I have a massive threat in this top right area. It's pretty scary, but I am building close to another Winter's Fury already. And the game is still quite even. Like I said, as long as I'm maintaining a fairly even game, Olaf is always in a pretty good spot, because as soon as I hit the funny button, they do lose a lot of value immediately. There's always something to consider. They actually ended up pulling a lot of their forces back here and kind of pivoting to the center. I thought this was kind of weird, because then I kind of could take a lot of their space, but I guess they didn't feel confident attacking into this. Maybe they wanted to try and reinforce this area, maybe push for an end or something. I wasn't really sure. It's my next turn. I go for the hit on this tank. I just moved the artillery up. This is definitely looking like a bit of a disaster up here, but, you know. I should be able to hold, hopefully. Moving my units down. You know, aggressive infantry posturing. I've got 2 copters here as well. Just trying to, the copters could also reach this fight pretty well and hover around this area too, which is why I kind of felt like I wanted more of them, because the fights were kind of playing around here a lot and copters giving more attack options. But yeah, try to pressure this city while my opponent's pressuring up here as well, just trying to match and mirror the aggression. And I end up just dropping another medium tank here, you know. I have the money to do it, and it's just going to kind of like help dissuade this kind of attack. Moving my anti-air down as well, covering the copters in this area. Just building a force over here on the left to try and pressure more cities, I guess. Because I'm going to lose this one as well, which is going to even up the economy game. I end up pulling out of this one, I think, because the tank could hit me. So yeah, I was like 1 capture from this one. But then I was like, well, I'm just going to lose this infantry for free. Maybe there was a better way to cover it or something, but I didn't really see it. So I just ended up pulling out, which feels kind of bad. My opponent ends up retreating with this area. Maybe drop a lot of money to defend. Tanks are moving into this central position as well, building up a force. Drop another copter, tank, infantry. Just building up a defensive force down here. The other good thing about copters into medium tanks is medium tanks don't want to hit copters as well, because obviously they rely on machine guns, which means they don't even get particularly good trades. You never want to waste medium tank hits on copters, so that's another good reason another valuable reason for medium tanks into copters. Sorry, copters into medium tanks is you can kind of just block off their attacks and they won't be able to get effective trades. Start capturing the city, blocking with a lot of infantry here, just moving my units down, just going for an aggressive cap here because I think this force isn't really strong enough to take me. I'm kind of like, you know, if I move this tank down, I'm 3 tanks to 3, 2 copters to 2, and I have an anti-air and an artillery pretty close. You know, I just feel like I can get solid counterattacks, I guess, and I have a Winter's Fury coming really soon, so if a fight does break out here, I think I should be able to clear most of it up with a good Winter's Fury. That's the other thing is, yeah, I'm playing pretty close to my bar here. Move my other tank down. Have the artillery here as well, in case my opponent moves up aggressively. Pushing my tanks up here, trying to, you know, hold my opponent back a bit. Keeping the artillery in range. I built another anti-air to, again, because there's a copter coming. I have another copter here as well, also posturing on this side, but I can also pull it down here as well. I just think copters in this central area are obviously very valuable, because there's a lot of weird ocean tiles here that limit vehicles. But obviously copters don't have to worry about that. My opponent's next turn. Man, this game definitely got messy. So they actually go for aggressive attacks. They trade their copter for my 5 HP artillery. I'm not sure. Super worth it, but maybe they're trying to... Do they have enough? Yeah, I guess it gives them enough for power value. Max force comes out. So obviously my opponent's just going to go for really strong first strikes here. Get a hit on my tank. 9-2. Get a hit on my tank. A4. Get another hit. 10-1. Okay. Copter hit on the infantry. It's actually a one-shot. I didn't even know that. And then they're just trying to protect the city. Build another anti-air. Tank resting on the HQ. Medium tank's actually moving down defensively, so I guess I feel like I'm pretty safe up here now as well. Love to get more infantry out or infantry over here to start retaking some of these cities maybe. Even the comm tower would be nice. Tanks were all backing off, getting repaired. This was a really weird move. I don't know how, like, why are we all the way back here? It's kind of crazy. I don't know, my opponent feels like they're playing really defensively with some of these movements. I didn't understand why all the forces were kind of backing off here, but maybe I was missing something. And here I have the funny button. Obviously step 1, smash the funny button. But it is kind of rough. A lot of these tanks are really IHP. Finish off this copter. Move around. Sack this tank for the 1 HP damage. Can finish it off with the 2 HP tank. Giving room to my other copter. Moving in. Finishing off that tank. So yeah, I'm getting the counter hits here. I'll just go for a repair. Move more infantry down. The fight isn't super one-sided in my favor, to be honest, but I kind of felt like I had to take the trades back. And obviously this anti-air is coming, which is obviously threatening my copters a lot. Actually, I'm loading my medium tank and an anti-air into this lander. This is what I was talking about. Like, medium tanks can be quite mobile on this map with good lander usage. But yeah, I kind of feel like, you know, my opponent's backing off a lot on this top right side. They've also retreated all their units, and then I've hit Winter's Fury, which means that all these units have not only retreated, they also can't really start moving out again this turn. Which gives me a lot of space just to kind of like... Did I not move the lander? Oh, I moved it that turn. Well, I don't know why I loaded that turn then. I guess that's kind of weird, but either way. Probably should have just moved my units out and then I could have put them into the lander next turn. I don't know why I did that. I guess maybe I thought I hadn't moved it yet. I'm not sure what happened. Definitely got a bit sloppy. My opponent finishes off this tank. The anti-air finishes off this infantry. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. That's what I was thinking. I was looking at the anti-air movement. I was thinking you made a mistake. But yeah, I remember now. Because of Winter Fury, my opponent's anti-air actually can't reach either of these copters. That's why I was feeling safe. Because this tile becomes... The thing about Olaf on this map is this reinforcement line, it has a plane in it, which means that Winter's Fury makes this a 2 tile for treads. So it became 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or 3, 4, 5, and they can't move here because this will be 7. So both of these copters are actually safe here, even though they look to both be within 6 tiles of the enemy factory where the anti-air is. I actually positioned perfectly, so with Winter's Fury, my opponent couldn't reach. When I was showing the movement last turn, it was because it had 1 extra movement from Max Force. But yeah, I was thinking that it was weird, because I didn't remember these copters dying. I was like, I remember placing them so they couldn't get hit. And that is what happened. Plans to go for a trade here. Obviously just trying to weaken my forces because I have quite an overwhelming numbers advantage, I suppose. Medium tanks and tank move into the center. They get a free knockout on infantry. All the units kind of moving down here to hold this position at this point. I think my opponent kind of gave up on this attack. It just is kind of scared of this push. So they're moving a lot of their units across the map to try and help defend. Another anti-air comes out. Makes sense. I do have 3 copters. This copter's here as well, kind of dissuading any central attacks, but this tank is not covered, which I think I do notice. Okay, so I end up finishing up this tank to hit KO. I put my tank on the city. Oh, I actually end up hitting the anti-air, but my tank on the city is quite safe here actually because my opponent only has anti-airs right now. Obviously they can hit into the tank. Yeah, I use the 4 HP tank to finish off this. And I get the infantry here. This copter's kind of low, so it's not a huge threat. But yeah, I set up like getting good defensive positions, constantly protecting my copters from the anti-airs. And yeah, just having my tank on my city, because the tank is quite safe in this regard, because yeah, it's just anti-airs and a copter here. The copter's half HP, so it's not really a great offensive threat. Drop my medium tank and anti-air in the center here. And yeah, I do notice the free hit here. Pretty valuable, get a free hit on this tank. And obviously, like, you know, medium tanks, like I said, I don't want to be hitting copters. It's not a great trade. But this is just outside of the copter range, so feel pretty happy with that one. Guess my opponent didn't see it when they hit the infantry. Tank, copter, infantry. Also, yeah, building copters here just lets me reinforce this area easier, where I feel like I'm kind of winning a little bit. But it is a bit of an aggressive push, because obviously my reinforcement is much further. But I am trying to move my units down here. Maybe try to get this medium tank even down to this front. I feel it'll be really impactful, so that's why I'm kind of pulling my units in this direction as well. Medium tank has to move back my opponent once again. They're threatening this top right area. But the lander just makes it so easy for me to move my units back and forth, you know, and keep defending this area or pushing aggressively. So I'm just kind of matching where my opponent decides to move in this game. They have another copter coming out. Tank moves back to get repaired. I go for the aggressive, well, the trade on my 4 HP copter to finish it off. One shot my infantry. It was kind of bad. Build another tank, start trying to hold this position more. But these trades are really aggressive, you know, like, I'm gonna finish with this copter next turn. I may have to, like, regroup as my tanks and copters are arriving, but I'm still feeling pretty solid about my unit count here. And yeah, they have just a big force amassing here again. But I am, you know, I'm still like a good 20k up. I'm down in unit count. It's mostly on infantry, I think. Yeah, I have half the infantry of my opponent. Moving my tank back to get repaired. One space out of the range, but I guess I could get max force. Have to consider it. Once again, defending my copter behind a front line where I can. Moving my infantry down within 3 squares of the city. Obviously, they don't want to hit here because it just opens up to a free anti-air kill. I have so many tanks now. Moving more copters down. Building another defensive formation here in case the medium tank tries to push up. And I actually ended up just trying to push aggressive my medium tank, get it down to this fight. Just force my opponent to commit more resources to this area or kind of like lead us into a... Yeah, I just ended up going for the push. I'm like, if I just move my units down here, I'm feeling confident that I'll win this side before my opponent can win this side, especially because I could run indirects, which my opponent will have to ram into. And my opponent doesn't have that option because they're playing max. So I felt pretty confident taking this kind of race sort of thing of like racing to get the neutral, or racing to take the opponent's base first. Even though I could tell it was going to be grueling, like we were going to be here a while. And you'll even see, like, by the time that the game is over, I still feel like it could have gone on a very long time, like I said earlier. So I ended up building 2 tanks. Got the copter here as well, in a kind of a defensive position, preventing any copter attacks. Just kind of like, you know, helping hold back my opponent's forces. End up to start moving up again. Infantry are coming. Tanks moving forward. Like I said, they're just setting up a push here. And it kind of feels like it's getting to a race scenario. Like, I'm kind of handshaking this race at this point. I'm feeling fairly confident that I can put it off. But it is going to take some careful maneuvering. Especially with a lot of max force on the way. Definitely something to be concerned about. Excuse me. I'm gesundheit myself. Yeah, and I'm getting the KO on this anti-air. Just go for the aggressive capture again. Just trying to pressure cities, moving the medium tank down, covering most of these squares at this point. My opponent didn't have the money to build another medium tank here, so... Or build a medium tank down here yet. So I've got a lot of offensive pressure in this regard, actually ending up getting this medium tank down here. I end up pulling this tank back, just to kind of deny that the KO, but it's not a huge deal either way, even if it happened, I guess. Drop another medium tank up here, trying to dissuade this attack again. Just really trying to hold this position up here. My opponent's trying to move up for this city as well. Like I said, we're just kind of in a race formation at this point. It's just most of the game at this point has been a lot of central play, I guess, but at this point it's really going to come down to... At this point. Sorry. It's just going to come down to who can kind of like get the better offensive push. Because we're just going to be trading these cities. Our economy's going to be even. It's just about going to come down to kind of the micro at this point, honestly. The macro, we've kind of given up on it. We're both just slamming faces, you know, max style. Another medium tank comes, and the medium tank now comes down for my opponent. Posturing all their units up here. It's getting pretty scary. We're all pretty nervous. It's all about to blow wide open. Moving my medium tank down. Just moving my forces in. It's not great terrain, but I have to be posturing aggressively. I feel like, you know, securing this capture, having the copters ready. And the max force isn't quite ready yet. It definitely could be if a turn kicks off. But it's not quite ready yet. I end up hitting this to get the counterattack, having my anti-air to cover the copter. Don't think my opponent wants to make that trade of just copter for copter, so... You know, I move my land drop to have another defensive tile, you know, blocking more 2 hits from my opponent. Pretty relevant here, honestly, to have the lander on the corner shoals, I think. Just stopping them getting 2 hits. I end up moving out a little bit aggressively, taking a KO on the infantry, delaying this capture a bit where I can. Doing another medium tank, so now I have 2 to 1. Which is really a really easy way to dissuade the push. Obviously, there's a copter here that's not as checked now. But yeah. They actually do end up blocking me and getting a pretty good copter here. I thought that was pretty smart. Medium tank moves up, gets a one shot on my tank. Max force comes out.
I'm sweating. I'm sweating. What I chose to do here as well, I didn't mention it last time, but I actually am putting my anti-air in the front line as well, blocking off these tanks. Obviously, it's only going to hit one tank shot, but I expected my opponent to be coming out aggressively next turn. And the anti-air is actually accomplishing nothing in this area. Just 8,000 gold of funds. It isn't countering any units. So what I end up doing is frontlining my anti-air, giving my tanks more of a window to, you know, be able to be blocked and get solid counterattacks in. I thought this is something I actually did that was quite smart, because yeah, just recognizing that this unit isn't useful in this area because there's no copters. The air support isn't going to be coming. You know, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like at least 3 turns for a copter could be relevant. So even if they take out my anti-air here, I don't think my opponent will bring aerial reinforcements for a... And, you know, getting from here as well is also 3 turns. I don't think they'll bring aerial reinforcements in time, so I end up frontrunning my anti-air here, recognizing it as a part of my army that isn't really relevant, and just using it as a meat shield. Which I felt like I was pretty happy with that. They get a one-shot on this tank. Man, max medium tanks in max force. They one-shot the anti-air as well. One-shot this infantry, trying to delay captures, I think. I actually was opening up for the copter one-shot. But very aggressive trade from my opponent here, like burning an anti-air for the copter. It's not a big deal, I guess, but I have another copter. This kind of means they have to build another anti-air because they're trading it out. And I think if you build an anti-air here, it's really, you know, it's a bad look for kind of the state of the army, the rest of the army, because I have like a little bit of an advantage in that regard when my copter's kind of free hitting tanks every turn. So they kind of forced them to build another anti-air, but if they build another anti-air, then I have like... Then they're not building more medium tanks, you know, to kind of dissuade this push, so that I can still get a first strike maybe next turn and this kind of thing, you know. So I think I put them in a bit of an awkward spot, but let's get good trades. But I also generated so much power this turn by dropping so many units. And once again, I'm close to like another Winter's Fury, which would be my 3rd this turn. So much conflict in this game, actually. So my opponent is getting a lot of good trades. But it's still pretty dangerous, because once again, I'm close to the Winter's Fury. And you just see again, though, you know, even though I'm a little bit behind here, I haven't taken my turn yet, obviously. Putting this tank into be repaired. Another Winter's Fury could just seal the deal in these kind of situations. Pick off the anti-air. Move the copter in to get this tank. Get a 2-hit. Bam! Winter's Fury. Suddenly all my trades are more effective. And like I said, because they sacked their anti-air, they have to build another one. Which means that suddenly I'm not scared of any reinforcements, you know. I have 2 tanks to 2 wounded tanks now. Move in, get the first rank of this medium tank. Now I'm a 9-2, you know, that's even in max force, but it was already AHP because of Winter's Fury. Suddenly I have massive control over this area. And yeah, it's because, like, you know, my opponent had to sack they sacked the anti-air to get the copter trade, but then they had to build another one because they're going to lose their anti-air, so I think it was a bit too aggressive. Moving my infantry down. Oh yeah, the copter came in and hit this artillery, so I ended up picking it off with the anti-air. Again, a really aggressive trade, I think. Maybe they just felt pressured, so they had to play forwards, but yeah, I ended up getting some pickoffs here. Join my tanks, because I don't think I'm having time to repair. Using the medium tanks to wall. Build another medium tank. You know, if this medium tank wants to go aggressive, I've got more coming. Any trade here is not good for my opponent. And you just saw the value swing of this turn. Like, look, it's 108 to 135, and it ends at 120 to 68. So this was a massive swing for me. You know, I just got so much value here. The snow, again, makes it hard for my opponent to kind of get the reinforcements going. And I've kind of whittled both armies down at this point, so I'm feeling really confident. But I will say, you know, there's like enough money in the game that my opponent can kind of just keep dropping medium tanks in this area, and it could be really hard for me to close it out, honestly. I think I'd get it at some point. Maybe moving another artillery down might be more cool. Did I not have enough money to build an infantry here, or did I just not do it, actually? I didn't even notice. Maybe I just forgot. Oops. Yeah, I think I just forgot to build an infantry here, so... Good move to me, good moves. I just noticed this base is empty, which is, you know, obviously cringe. Then I'm picking off my artillery here with the tank. Kind of another sack, though. There's a fair few inefficient trades in kind of the later fighting from my opponent, I find. But it could have just been because of the pressure. You know, they were just in weaker and weaker positions. The anti-air ends up picking off this infantry, but again, it's 1,000 and you're sacking 8k. You know, they're really just trying to mitigate this push, take out my foot soldiers, but it's not working out. Another medium tank comes out. Everything's moving back, trying to get healed, trying to reinforce this front at this point, because it's really doomed down here. And I have 3 medium tanks completely dissuading this push any further. Snow ends. My next turn, take out this anti-air. I do something which I think is really smart here as well. once again, this tile is the only tile, and it's a single point. And again, I just drop a copter here. And this copter doesn't have much ammo, but this medium tank, it just completely punishes this purchase, because now the medium tank can't get through to help these tanks. So these units are all doomed. You know, this is a 2 medium tank and 2 tanks of value that I'm just going to get for free at this point with no counterattack presence. I can start pressuring this city. So I kind of want this left side as well. Got this port in 4 turns. Moving tanks up, finishing this off. Getting ready to start capturing the city next. Just moving for repair. It's a 1 HP, probably should just join, but you know. Finish off this tank on the top side. I start loading medium tanks as well. I'm pretty confident at this point. I'm just gonna start moving my tanks down here as well. Just pushing for the end, honestly. Move the anti-air to cover them from this copter. Tanks up, build another medium tank. I've still got 2 to 1 here. And at this point, you know, I think it's just too hard for my opponent. I think they recognize that at this point. I think this is the resign. Copter moves down. Medium tank comes out. They build another medium tank, but I'm just gonna get all these properties for free at this point. These medium tanks are all stuck here. They're moving units down, you know, I've got the 2 medium tanks coming, but they just ended up hitting the resign button, and I don't blame them. I honestly am very grateful, because, yeah, like I said, I think, you know, it would be hard for me to get through these units in any reasonable time. It would have been a grueling finish. I mean, I'm moving my medium tanks down. I'll probably just wait, capture these cities, you know, let the reinforcements come with these medium tanks, and maybe I can push my way through. Because at some point, you know, I could probably trade for this copter at this turn, maybe. I'm not sure if it would be the right move, but maybe I could do that. I'm not sure actually what I would do here had it been my turn, but either way, you know, it's it's gonna be painful getting through these units, and honestly, I'm just, you know, I appreciated the courteous resign, because I wouldn't even. It was gonna be a rough one. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna start pushing economic leads. I guess I'll capture this city that my opponent won't have. You know, just holding this position maybe. But it was going to be pretty rough, honestly, I think, to close it out. I wasn't feeling, like, super confident, but I do have a solid unit advantage, especially in value. And I could probably just end up massing my opponent with units at some point, but still not super confident in closing out games personally, and this game in particular, I think it would have been a tough one to close out. But, you know, at some point. It still would have taken me a while, I think. So, yeah, I did appreciate the resign. But, yeah, I think it was a solid game. I think there were definitely blunders on both sides. A lot of weird micro choices from both of us. Definitely had times where I didn't respect max powers. I think nobody good at times where Winter Fury just kind of decimated their army. But I think it was, you know, a pretty solid high level game for the most part. And yeah, it kind of just ended up devolving into this crazy base race. But it was a lot of fun to play. Really enjoyed it. Always enjoy playing against nobody good. And hopefully it was fun to learn from. So I hope you guys enjoyed this analysis. Thank you very much for watching it. If you did enjoy it, make sure to leave it a like. It really helps out the channel. And subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I've been Snitch. This has been CO Select. Thank you guys for checking it out. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye.